me to sit, so I'm holding still, huh?
You got it.
I don't mind if you ask questions, but does she need to be closer to us so that he won't look, or
What's that?
Just don't look at me. Just look at
that
them.
might be off?
You can just ignore me.
That might
No,
be
it's
awkward
fine.
for him. You sure?
Oh,
Because you can come closer.
will it be awkward if you don't look at me when we talk?
You know, if they really don't want me turning my head, you probably ought to come
Yeah.
over there by them.
Yeah.
Either next to Shirley or on
But
the
you
other
need your-
side of,
No, I
of the
got it.
camera.
Okay.
I got it on him.
Okay. Okay. Do me a favor, sir. Spell your first and last names, please.
Okay, Kerry Messer is Kerrymesser.
Carrie, just fill me in. I understand that a body was found on your property, and it has been identified as your wife, Lynn.
Yes.
What was your reaction when you learned the news, and who told you?
Well, when I first, the actual truth is, when I first got the news that remains had been found, it took me quite a while to process that it could actually be true. I ran through scenarios in my mind if it was another lie that somebody was starting, and then I was sent some evidence in a photograph. So when I got that, I just started shaking. I was in St. Louis to have dinner with a pastor and his wife that were traveling through St. Louis late, and so I had to contact them and cancel those plans, and was coming home whenever I got the photo that yeah, it's appeared to be that something really was found. And I got home and found Sheriff's Department folks all here, and so I figured, okay, it must be true, or they wouldn't be expending the resources at this point for something like that.
Who called you?
Actually, my son called me, my older son, Aaron.
And what was your reaction?
A lot of mixed thoughts, a lot of mixed emotions. I processed the scene the following day, the FBI forensics team. I really have little information as to what they found, picked up, what may be beneficial to the case. But when it was said and done and finished, the sheriff was very kind and took me back there to show me where the location was. And that was much more difficult emotionally than I was expecting.
Give me 2 seconds to come back. Okay, sure. Stay right where you're at. You're good right there.
Stay here.
He wants a different angle.
Can you express why it was so difficult for you, Carrie?
20 months. I suppose I've been trying to convince myself that Lynn couldn't be alive, and this was the answer to, you know, a solid answer to that question, and it was like all the residual hope, which wasn't much, but still there was, you know, that lingering hope that maybe we were all assuming the wrong thing. But yeah, all that hope was gone.
How did that hit you? How did that affect you?
In a lot of ways. I guess the next 20 minutes driving home, I really had a hard time stopping myself from shaking. And then it was a matter of interacting with law enforcement, and they wouldn't let me close to the scene, and you know, that upset me quite a bit, and then they wanted to get rough with me about that and act all ignorant about it because, you know, I wanted answers, and they weren't willing to give me any answers. And so So that was difficult. But, you know, in the last couple of days, the best analogy I could come up with is it's kind of like our lives was this stream of refreshing water going down a creek, and a log jam had jammed it up, and the water had stopped and backed up, and it's just gotten higher and higher to where we're drowning in stagnant water, and the stagnant water just keeps getting nastier and nastier. People get more and more frustrated and more stressed, and more at the end of their ropes, looking, searching, hoping for answers. And everybody becomes much more susceptible to what critics and people who want to second guess, and people who know nothing of us, who want to say what they think happened when they don't know a single thing about it. And different family members, everybody responds, and everybody's processing differently. And so some are dealing with anger issues, and some are dealing with just all kinds of unsettling questions. And in the midst of all of that, all of a sudden, Tuesday evening, the Lord took the biggest log out of that log jam. So right now we're waiting to see if the log jam's going to clear, or if it's just going to trickle out a little bit of water at a time, or what's going to happen at this point.
You said you wanted answers. What answers do you want?
What happened?
Do you have,
I would like the answers to settle the accusations. Being the husband of a missing wife is not an enviable place to be.
what are the...
It
I'm sorry.
doesn't take long for people to start accusing you of all kinds of things, and over time the accusations just get more imaginative and crazy.
You talk about accusations, and I'm sure that there have been many, including people accusing you of harming your wife,
Yes.
perhaps killing your wife.
Mm-hmm.
Did you kill your wife? Did you do anything to harm your wife
no.
or to cause your wife's death?
No, absolutely not. Lynn and I have had a very loving and abiding marriage and relationship. She loved our life, so did I. I think that's what's made all this so hard. It's what made the grieving process so difficult, is to lose that. And it's been 28 months. And it's hard to find the right words to explain it. And it doesn't help that eventually I can't explain myself, but I have found myself being attracted to someone who's been very helpful and who's been very supportive through the process, and so we've ended up being accused of being in an affair, and that that's the reason why Lynn is gone and all this kind of stuff, and those accusations just keep spinning more and more out of control. I can't do anything about it, but there's no evidence to back any of it up. It's just not true. Law enforcement went through all 5 of our laptop computers. They went through all of our electronics. They went through all of our history. They've interviewed everybody that needs to be interviewed. I've had over 40, I don't know exactly, but well over 40 exchanges with law enforcement myself for the first 10 months. And yet now I find out I'm being accused of being uncooperative with law enforcement. They never found anything about any affair with anybody because there was nothing there. I am not sweating over what they found with Lynn's body or her remains, because I know there's no evidence that implicates me. I don't believe there's anything that implicates my sons. I want to know what happened.
And then you also mentioned your sons. One of your sons, in fact, has made some serious accusations against you. so much so that he believes that you may have harmed your wife, his mother. How do you respond to that?
Um, I'm praying for my sons and the rest of my family, but there were pre-existing conflicts and issues, and he has to work through his own struggles his own way. I can't account for why he's taken it as far as he has, but he never made these accusations until enough time had passed and everybody was stressed enough, and I think he's just talked himself into believing one thing or another, and over time he's talked himself into believing more. And I'm hopeful and prayerful that we'll get the kind of answers that will help him settle down, help him process, and help him go through the grieving process in a healthy manner. Right now he's just not doing it in a healthy manner.
What do you think happened to your wife, Kerry?
I really think the redeveloping pain in her hips was much more overwhelming for her than I had realized. And she had spent 11 years making plans for our lives once she had new hips and would be pain-free for 20, 25 years is what her expectation was. And so she had a whole list of the activities we were going to engage in. We were very seriously looking at some tack and talking to some friends who are more experts with horses, and we were about to purchase a couple horses to get our grandchildren into horseback riding, since she was going to be able to do that type of thing again. And 20 days prior to this, she found out that the recurring pain was something they couldn't do anything about, and she was have to go back on pain meds for the rest of her life. She was devastated. And then there was some interpersonal conflict with someone else that boiled over shortly before, and I think it all just overwhelmed her. No one, the night that they saw her that Monday night, no one reports seeing anything unusual. The only thing I detected unusual was she was more reserved than normal, but it was normal. She worked on her craft projects and the various things that she typically would do, and we went to bed.
Do you think she took her own life?
At this point, yes. Based on everything. The note she left was so indescript. That was really hard to accept for the first 6 months, and I got to the point where I realized I wasn't going to survive if I didn't accept that as the most viable theory. And having found her, what little bit I've been told as to where she was, how she was, and the information that I have gathered from different people over the last 28 months, it's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Can you share what she wrote in the note?
I can share the first line with you because I keep it in my wallet, but the rest of it I can't share with you because it wasn't written to me. So you want me to get that? I'll get it out. I'll
Sure.
share it with you.
Sure.
I went to my wallet, my I can't read this on camera. You have my permission to film it, but I can't read it on camera.
Did she write it to you?
Yes. this in my wallet because it's what has sustained me through this. I don't know that I could have survived this if she hadn't given this to me. And law enforcement got mad at me because I told them that I made a copy of it. I'm like, I'm sorry, but this is my note. She wrote it to me. But I have shared it with friends. It's just the kind of thing you don't know how to interpret it. I've never seen him, never heard do anything like this. And I can't explain how the location she was in was an area that was thoroughly searched by the sheriff's department and the professional search and rescue team that they had brought in. It wasn't, I don't know if our people searched it afterwards because I wasn't in charge of the searching, of the family searching. My son and my brother-in-law was in charge of that, and they would have to answer whether they went through those particular woods or not. It was my understanding that they started beyond our property, so I don't know whatsoever if they would, if the civil searches, I'll call it the family searches, went, and family and friends. I don't know if our family and friends went through those particular woods or not.
Where was she found?
About a mile from here, on the far south edge of the property.
Did she have a history of fear?
She does have a history of walking at night, but this made no sense. You know, I've said it before, there was a light rain through the night, and it's my understanding that that rain would have been falling when she left. A very light rain, just a very light drizzle. Over a 6-hour period, it was only a half-inch of rain, but the issue is it was complete cloud cover, and it was completely dark. So there was absolutely no light out. So that's one of the reasons why we thought, you know, if she would have went through the woods, she could have harmed herself, you know, just not being able to see where she's walking. But I have no idea if they found a flashlight or anything with her. They haven't informed me about any details.
Nor have they told you the cause of death yet?
To my knowledge, they don't have that yet. And I don't know if they can determine that with what they have. I have no idea.
How much did you love your wife?
More than life itself. That's why we didn't do anything for 6 months. Just let the farm go to pot. Because I had no motivation to do anything. So,
What's your greatest hope now, Kerry, moving forward?
my greatest hope is that we would get complete and honest answers and understanding. And that Lynn could be remembered for who she really is, who she's always been.
What do you remember most about her?
Every day's an adventure.
Do you remember her smile? Do you remember
Can't forget it.
what was it like? What was she like?
Lynn's smile is infectious. She laughs at any and everything. Everything's a joy to her. She loves people. And she loves to share the gospel with anybody she can. She loves children particularly.
How much do you miss her?
Pardon me?
How much do you miss her? Excuse me.
There's no way to measure it. There's no way to measure it.
Did the investigators or the coroner or anyone say whether there were any marks or any bruises or anything on Lynn's body or anything like
No.
that?
No, they've been very, I suppose, cautious not to say a word about anything. I have no idea. It was obviously a small pillow and some type of a small blanket, light blanket that, or fleece that she had with her. I had no idea. I have no idea what kind of clothing they may have found, because I still don't know what she may have put on when she left, and I have no concept of what that's going to be. But when my son described the remains of a shredded pillow that he saw, the type of handmade pillowcase that was on it, I immediately recognized what he was describing. I've got the match to it sitting in there in the dining room with all the other stuff related to our search for Lynn. I went and got it the other day so I could ask my son if that was, for sure what he thinks he saw.
Was it?
He was hesitant to because there's been deterioration stuff sitting out in the weather, and he didn't really want to talk about it, so I left him alone. But it is what he described to me that night on the phone.
Kerry, what made you decide to talk with me today and talk with us as reporters?
There's 4 news agencies that I felt actually tried to help us in the beginning. Not just write a story, but actually showed real interest in trying to help us find Lynn. And those 4 are the Daily Journal from Farmington, the Missouri Times in Jefferson City, Channel 12 News out of Cape Girardeau, and Channel 2 News in St. Louis. And you yourself have been very, very gracious. You've allowed me to come on your program to talk about grieving and such, and I think you're the 4 that have actually shown real interest in who we are, rather than just some flashy news item to put on to sell advertising. And quite honestly, I could care less for the other media that wants to call me all the time, trying to ask me questions and trying to pin me down to follow up on criticisms. And I don't care if you guys have criticisms you need to ask about. I understand it's part of the story at this point. Sad enough. But you're the 4 that actually showed interest in trying to help us from the beginning.
But even with that, you didn't have to talk with us. Even
it's my way of
what I
trying to
mean?
say thank you that you did what you could to help us when others really didn't seem to be concerned.
Your wife has been found, and even though this is not the outcome that you wanted, that no one wanted.
Well, right now my heart is fixated on how torn up my family is, how torn up Lynn's family is, and the desire for the kind of answers that will help pull the family back together and help everybody understand the truth rather than the stagnant waters that have built up and gotten worse.
How are you doing?
I'm managing. That's my pat response these days when people ask me how I'm doing. I'm managing. I didn't do well at all the first year. That was a mess. Second year, I started learning that this is what it is. I've got to figure it out. And This year I made a 57 years old. I've never made New Year's resolutions. I made a New Year's resolution this year that I was going to learn how to walk again. And it's not been easy because everybody tells you pick yourself up and move on, but when you do, then everybody criticizes you. So I've had to come to grips with, doesn't matter what I do or don't do, people are going to turn it and twist it and make accusations. And all I can say is I pray the critics never find themselves with the missing loved one, with everybody pointing fingers at them.
Is your heart broken with the loss of your wife?
Absolutely.
What does that feel like to you?
I've been processing that for a long time. It's I've tried to use the word picture before, but people don't know what flesh hooks are. It's like flesh hooks have been sunk into my heart and have just ripped it apart. So the best way I can say it for people to understand, it's like having your heart put through a shredder. And then over time, talking to enough people, spending enough time with your counselors, and in time, you realize it is possible for the Lord to start growing you a new heart, but that shredded heart stays there. It's never heals. It's part of who you are for the rest of your life. And your real friends are the ones that help you strengthen that new heart and don't beat up on you over the shredded one.
Why, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I am so sorry for the loss of your wife.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything we didn't touch on maybe we should have? Or
I wanted, you won't have time on the story, but I'd sure like to say thank you to those people who've been faithful to pray for us.
Have you thought about funeral arrangements once you do get the remains released back to the family?
I've started that conversation with my pastor, but I don't know what to do because Lynn and I had our plans, but our plans were completely contingent on our parents preceding us. And one parent remains, and I don't have, because strains in the family, I don't have the ability to communicate to ask what those wishes might be, and I don't want to offend those wishes. And I don't know how to avoid that problem. I don't know how to settle that problem. So I'm hoping I'll have time to figure that out somehow.
Okay.
It won't be until we have more answers.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh yeah. It may be some time, I'm sure.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll get to a point where the sheriff's department says they're finished. Then it'll be time to do that. So,
and I'm sorry for your loss.
it is what it is. It just went out as you were stepping
Yeah,
on.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't touch anything.
No.
Did the
Perfect timing, I guess.
Could be. You never know. If you don't
Perfect
mind,
timing.
I'm going to get some shots of you just sitting out here. And we'll get some shots real quick.
You want me here or
Yeah,
somewhere
just
else?
sit right there. I'm going to get everything from the back.
Do you have other questions?
She covered a lot of the questions that I had, so.
Rachel from Missouri Times would have had a lot more challenging questions because she's been talking to Abram extensively.
Yeah.
So, but I told her it's okay.
Wow.
Not okay, but it's
No, I understand what you mean.
what media has to do.
Right.
Are you good with your stuff? I'm gonna get some like long shots of the barn here. I'm gonna, in other words,